Good day and welcome to this tutorial video. If you're watching this video, you're interested in making daily workflow steps, so we're going to cover that. In this overview, this is the section that we're going to be dealing with, making daily timesheets, sending them corrections, etc., etc. So at the end of this, you really wanted to do all your mundane tasks for you and be justified in your laziness. So you wanted to do daily imports and send daily timesheets. And when the client has made their corrections, they send it back to the system, and it's going to make those changes, send another timesheet to them, and just cycle through that until they send the confirmations, the approvals of the daily timesheet. When they send that approvals, then they want to get a PDF version of that timesheet to, just confirm this is what they've approved. So you wanted to do that, but it's risky because what happens if the device hasn't communicated for the day? There's an issue with the device and it needs to be reset or fixed or replaced. You don't want the workflow rule to run if that's the case. What happens if the timesheet gets sent to the client, but the client just sits on that timesheet and doesn't do anything about it? How do we know about that in due time, so we don't find out too late, maybe on a Monday? Besides looking at the dashboard, how do we get notified? Besides nagging rules and escalation rules, how do we notify ourselves about those things? And what about the client? What if they do approve the times? What confirmation do we have of those approved times? And if the client comes to us and says, hey, no, I didn't approve those times, you're lying, how do we go to them with confidence and say, yes, here's the proof that you did actually approve those times, and here's when you did it? How do we do that? How do we have that? And also knowing that the client, we're not only trying to work against the client, we want to work for the client, because we've got to give them confidence that this electronic system is actually better than the old way of doing it. They're used to signing a physical piece of paper, and now they're going to a kind of a mysterious electronic version of making these changes. How do we give them confidence that this is in fact safer and more secure than them signing a fraudulent signature on a timesheet? How is this more secure? So let's go through that. That's what we're going to be covering in this video. So in each workflow container, you need to set the workflow steps. Each workflow step has its unique action, whether that action is importing or fill up rules, creating a daily timesheet, sending, receiving, sending an export. Everyone has its unique function, and you're going to create these different steps in order to achieve what you want to achieve in the workflow. You're going to name each step, whatever you want to name it. You're going to set a trigger time for it to go. You're going to set which steps are dependent on other steps. For example, you don't want the import to run unless the device check has been checked and everything's fine. So you're going to make the import step dependent on the device check step, and if the device check step fails, then the import step is not going to work, not going to run. Before we go into the next section, I just want to take you to the system and give you a quick overview. So this is one of my clients where I've set up some workflows. I'm going to edit the workflow rules for the daily rules there, and then it's going to open up, and you're going to see a lot of steps here, which is fine. We're not going to go through them in detail. I just want to take you through an overview of everything here. In a workflow container, you're going to have an option to add new workflow rules, and here's all my workflow steps. You have an option to select a step and edit it, copy a step, remove a step, or reprocess a step. You're going to have the summary page of all the workflow rules that have already set up. You're going to have columns for the name, what time it's going to run, position in terms of everything, the employee selection or the view employee by, extra fields or everything like that. There's the device that have been selected, the action. This action specifically is all device communication check, and we'll look at all the options, all the different actions just now. Escalation rules are coming in soon. You're going to say that you can tell which other workflow rule this step is dependent on. For example, the import rule here is dependent on the device check rule over here, and if it's successful, if the device check rule is successful, then the import will run. Other columns over here will be the dependent on status. You've seen that. The last run time, which would have been today. Today is the 27th, by the way, and it was successful, and here's some more information imported successfully. So that's the overview of what's inside a workflow container and how to read the workflow steps. The importing steps is the first daily steps that you'll do. The next steps will be the daily steps, but we'll take the importing steps first. So first step you'll put in there is a device check to make sure that the devices have communicated. Then you're going to put a failed notification step in to tell you if a device hasn't communicated. Remembering that the device notification step, you're going to have to put in details, because when you get that email, it's not going to automatically tell you. You're going to have to manually put in the message body of that email what the workflow container's name is. You're going to need to put in the account name and number. You're going to put in the devices, etc., etc. Before we get to that, you'll also need to put in as much information as you can about that what has failed. A description of the fact that a device check has failed. Then the last step you'll put in is the import, to run the import once everything has been checked, the devices have been checked. So before we get to daily, let me just take you to the system and give you a practical example. I'm going to create a new workflow container, and we're going to start from the beginning so I can show you what that looks like. It'll be a daily container, and I'm going to make it for one cost center. Let's make a new workflow. I'm going to call this second ops, which is one of the departments, one of the cost centers there. It's going to be a daily rule, and it's going to run every single day of the week. Not going to be dependent on any other workflows. And the start date and end date you can ignore. Save it. And when it comes in, there it is. We're going to edit the workflow steps. We're going to create a new step over here, and then the first step will be called device check. It's in the memory, so it's already written in there. Here are the different actions that you can make this this workflow step. There's all device communication check, which is what I'm going to select, but there's also TNA device communication check. That step will only look at devices that are marked as TNA devices. Any access control devices, it's going to ignore them. Then the other steps would be the exports, the AX exports, the fill-ups. You can have a step to import your daily timesheets. Here's your PDF confirmations that will be sent. You'll set those steps up to be sent after the offline daily timesheets have been authorized. It's just the PDF version, so you can give confirmation to yourself and the client of what has been authorized. Alright, there's a receive mail step, send mail step, there's send FTP and send SFTP. Those are, FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol, and really refers to when a system sends information to another system. We're not talking about emails here, but when it sends it electronically through the internet to one system to another, no human being involved there, you're talking about an FTP. And an SFTP is Secure File Transfer Protocol. That's when the two systems agree on a language or a coding system that before they send the message from the one system to the other, they encode it, send it, and then when it arrives at the other system, for example AX knows how to translate it. This is so that if anybody intercepts it in the middle, finds a message, they can't really do anything with it because they don't know how it's been encrypted, how it's been translated, how to translate it and mess with that data. So we're just going to go ahead and select all device communication check. This step is going to run, at 7 o'clock. Going to be for the cost centers and by devices. Alright. The next section of the step is to say we only want to check Rheinmetall because the second ops people, they'll only use Rheinmetall 2 device. They're not going to use Rheinmetall 1 device. It's too far for them to use. Then we're going to say last device communications from 3 hours from runtime. So it's going to take 7 hours minus 3. It's going to look at any time between 4 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning and make sure the device has communicated. Now we're not talking about the last clock sent, and I know that's what you're used to. You look at the last clock, the last activity on that report. You need to know that the device, even if nobody clocks in it, it's still sending a message to the server to say, server, I'm still awake, I'm still online, there's nothing wrong with me. Now the system will look for that message. If it looks in the last 3 hours and sees there's no message like that, whether someone's clocked or not, but if there's no confirmation message that everything's right with that device, then it will trigger this, or it won't trigger, it'll make this step fail. And you want the step to fail in that situation. The last page on every workflow step is just a summary step, just like it is with when you work setting up a workflow. I'm sorry, not a workflow, shift rule. You'll have a summary. Your basic details, your first screen, and then your workflow step selections, your second screen. Everything's fine. We're going to finish that step. So that's the first device check. But now you need to put in a step to tell you if the device check failed, if it found the device did not communicate in the day. So we start a new step. And this step is going to be, I always call them notification, device not communicated. And that's going to be a send email step, because you want to send yourself an email for that. That's going to run at 7:01, 1 minute after the device check was triggered. It's going to be dependent on the device check step, and that's going to only trigger if the device check step failed. I have mentioned this, but if the device check step fails, that means that there was a device that did not communicate. Only then do you want to be notified that there's something wrong with this step. Employees, you're going to say it's the cost center, it's by device. Now here you're going to select who you want to send it to. You want to send it to yourself or whoever needs it, and then you want to send a little email message. This is what's going to be in the email message body. What do you want to tell yourself in case that device doesn't communicate? You want to say device communication, double M, fail workflow rule container, second ops, account details, and you can put this in whatever order you want. It's going to be 6091 Ryan Metal, and device would be Ryan Metal 2. So now when you get this email, you're going to know exactly how to investigate it, where to trace it back to the source, and find out, do you need to contact the site and reset it, or is it just a minor issue? You can be able to trace that back and finalize that. So once that's done, you can start your import step. Call it import. Make the action import. Run it also at 7:01 at the same time as the notification. Hopefully nothing. And you do need to know that if 7:01 comes and for any reason the system is a bit slow and the device check hasn't happened at 7:01, it's fine. The system will just delay that until the device check step has been completed and is successful. Going to make it dependent on the device check, and it must be successful. The status of the device check must be successful for this to run. Going to select the view employees that we want to cover. So we want to select a cost center and device. So in the selection menu, when we get to it, we're going to select the import, the way we want it to import. And when we get there, you'll notice that there are 4 different options, or at least 3 different options for now. You'll select second ops because that's the group that you only want to import, only for Ryan Metal 2. And you want to look for clocks within. You know what that step is, 16. Look for clocks before. We'll cover in midnight shift, so don't worry about that now. Use direction, yes. In future, there's going to be a 4th option to say look for clocks from, and that, as you know, is going to be used for sites or for departments that are working in night shift. You want to only import clocks from the afternoon onwards, so you don't mix up clock-ins in the beginning of the day with the previous shift with what should be considered the current shift. So that's not there yet, but it's being developed. And that is that. So you've set up your importing rules. We're just going to go back to here and look at the next section of your daily rules, which is your daily timesheet rules. For this, you're going to need to generate. You need a step to generate the daily timesheet. You need a step to send the daily timesheet. Also knowing and keeping in mind that this is a client-facing document. You must word it correctly, knowing that they're going to read this and they need to know basic instructions. They need to know they need to make corrections. They need to send it back to the system and what the address is. They need to confirm. Eventually, they need to confirm that everything is right, and if there's any issues, what must they do? They must contact the labor broker if there are issues. You also need to put in a step to receive that email. When the client finishes up making corrections or approving the times, you need to have a workflow step that is monitoring for the email to be received back, to pull that in, pull in the changes, and automatically regenerate a timesheet and resend that. So that's what the receiving email will do. You also want a failed notification, just in case the client sends back the timesheet, puts in the wrong temp number, or the wrong authorization number. They may insert columns or delete columns. You want something to tell you that, whoops, something's gone wrong with the import or the receiving of that email. Something needs to be done. So you set up a failed notification. And in that, just like with the previous workflow fail notification for your device checks, you need to give yourself as much information in that email as possible. So you need to know workflow container, the account name and number, and check which workflow to use. Also, in your daily timesheet steps, you need to send a PDF confirmation. When the client sends back the daily timesheet and approves all the hours, you need to send yourself and them a PDF version of that timesheet to have a record of what was approved, when it was approved, and who it was approved by. So we'll check that out just now. Client facing, remember it's confirming hours they've just approved. And then obviously once you've generated the PDF, you must send it to that client. Okay, before we get there, let's go to the system and look at the practical example of that. So you want to insert a new workflow step, and this is the step to generate the timesheet, the offline timesheet. So we're going to call it daily time sheet, and you're going to select this section over here, offline daily split timesheet. Confusing words, I know, sorry about that. It's developer language, but this is what you're looking for. Select that for your daily timesheet. You want this to be sent at 7. Let's say it's going to start sending from 10 past 7, or generating at 10 past 7. Not sending at 10 past 7, it's just being created at that time. It's dependent on the import step, and only if the import was successful will it run. You select the cost center. Now you want it just for the second ops department. You want the extra fields. You also want a column for cost center, position, rate group. Separate hours into separate hours worked in different categories. I'm going to select no because I know this client, they stay in the same department the whole week, so we don't really have to separate hours, and they don't split into different departments, which is fine. So I don't have to separate hours into the relevant groups, but you may want to separate hours into relevant groups. Yes, you can select by cost center or position, which means it'll subdivide by it'll have the second ops group, and then it'll have forklift drivers and those forklift drivers under second ops, and then inventory clerks or the inventory clerks under second ops. But I'm selecting no. And then when we finalize a step after the summary screen, we finalize it. The next thing we need to do is to send this email. Once it's generated, we need to tell the system to grab that what was generated and send it an email and who to send that to. So we're going to go send timesheet. That's going to be a send email action, and that's going to send at 7. Let's make it 7:01, or maybe let's give it 3 minutes to generate. Knowing that this isn't terribly important, if 7:13 comes and the daily timesheet has not been generated, you don't have to worry about that. It'll just wait until it'll trigger and say, "Ooh, daily timesheet." It's dependent. Let's just put that in there. It's dependent on the daily timesheet being successful. It hasn't been successful yet, so it's going to wait until it is successful. It could be 10 o'clock in the morning, and only then, if that's when the daily timesheet gets generated, then it'll trigger then and grab that daily timesheet and send it. You want to make it on cost center, device, next. Alright, send it to me. Obviously this is going to be going to the client, but I haven't set up the client, so you would select the client name, who that's going to, and you'd send an email message to them as well. And the email will go something like this. Already in the email it's already going to say good day, and then you say please find attached timesheet for temp staff for yesterday. Please advise on corrections or approve timesheet. Approve timesheet, and send back to, you put the email address there, which is auto@ersbio.co.za. For inquiries, however you spell inquiries, whoops. I don't know how to spell inquiries, sorry guys. For assistance, please contact the labor broker representative on site. Oh, just representative. They may not be on site, so you can just leave it there. Make sure it's spelled correctly. Excellent. So that's the little message that they will receive when they get the email. It's going to be in the email body. And you send it. So now you've got the send email step, but you still need to insert a step to receive the email. Tell the workflow that it's got to be monitoring for an email coming back to pull in those corrections, reprocess the times, regenerate a new daily timesheet, and send one. Now luckily you don't have to have a whole bunch of new timesheets. If you in the workflow steps, if you have a receive step saying receive, let's say daily timesheet, and that's going to run at 7 from 7:15. From 7:15 it's going to be waiting for a new timesheet. You can put whatever time you want in there, and that's dependent on the send item. Successful. So what this is telling the system now is this receiving mail, it must start looking from 7:15 at the timesheet that was sent in this step, the send timesheet step. So if it knows it would send a timesheet to Supervisor Joe Bloggs, it'll know that only Joe Bloggs can authorize that. When it looks for the PIN number or the authorization code, it's going to be looking for Joe Bloggs' password, his system user password or PIN number. When it receives that email from Joe Bloggs, sees the PIN number is correct, it's going to automatically pull in those times or those changes, make a new timesheet, and automatically send another timesheet to Joe Bloggs. You don't have to put in new steps to resend a new updated timesheet. It'll do it automatically. So cost center, just to be safe. I don't know if that's terribly important, but you do that. Right, now either when it receives that email, it could fail, and you need to be notified in case the system has the wrong PIN number has been put in, or the supervisors added in columns or deleted columns or rows or something. They've done something they shouldn't have, and it couldn't import. You need to be notified that something went wrong. So you put in a notification step. You'll also put in a confirmation step. Once the supervisor sends an email saying I approve these hours, you need to put a PDF step in there to send a PDF confirmation email to yourself and to the client to have a record of those times that were approved. So let's start with the notification step. So notification timesheet issue. And that's going to be a send email step. It's going to be running from 7:15, sure, dependent on the receive daily timesheet step, and if it failed, then again, give yourself as much, it's going to be sending to you, give yourself as much information as possible, saying daily time sheet failed. Let's get some more space here. Workflow. What's a workflow? Second ops account 691 Ryan Metal, and issues with receiving timesheet. Please check workflows for further information. All right. So that will let you know if anything bad happened, and the last step would be to tell you if everything went well, if it's been confirmed for your records and for the client's records. So that's going to be the step PDF daily split timesheet. That's going to be let's make it called PDF daily timesheet confirmed. That's going to start running from about, let's make it 20 past, why not? Depending on the receiving daily timesheet, if that was successful. And then the options that you're going to choose now are pretty much, they have to be the exact same options that you chose for the daily timesheet in the beginning. So I'm only going to select second ops. I select cost center, position, and rate group in the daily timesheet. I selected no here for separating hours. And that was about it. Next and finish. And that is the last of the daily rules. We're going to get to employee confirmations later, and those will come in over here. But right now, at this stage, we've gone through all the daily mundane things. So now you can be justified and confident in your laziness, and yet you don't have to do these mundane, repetitive tasks. The system is going to be doing it for you. You can also rest assured that should anything go wrong, the system is going to let you know about it. It's going to send you a notification email to say, hey, device didn't communicate. So you can do that. You can also give the client reassurance that should they approve all their times, they've got a record, you've got a record, everything has been kept and recorded. You can also assure them that if someone else tries to approve their timesheet and they're putting in the wrong PIN code, those times will not be changed, and that will be rejected, and it won't be made on their behalf. So their PIN code or their password is like their digital signature, which is way more safe than a written signature that can easily be forged. So thank you for watching. Please go on to the next TUT video, which is about how to read and use a daily timesheet. Please note that this is an external video, meaning that it's meant for clients and operations. When you view it, it's going to be addressing the client and how they will authorize timesheets, talking about things like invoices and backing documents and things that are not so relevant to us, but please, it's still going to take it's still going to cover the fundamentals about how to read and use a daily timesheet. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful. Please carry on to the next TUT.